not as geeky or nerdy as a topic as some people probably want, but I'm pretty sure we can find a way to make it nerdy.
Conventions are pretty geeky.
Yeah.
So what I figured was we could talk about is something like how each of us got kind of started in the convention scene, because I know we all have different takes on this, and then go from there and see where it takes us. We'll see where it takes us from there. If you're cool with that. Cool. Somebody let me know if my audio isn't working properly, because that's my thing apparently, failed audio.
It's always so frustrating when you're streaming and like you have like an issue like that somebody in chat like points out, and then you're just like, I don't know what to do to fix it.
I mean, the one time I streamed for like what was it, like 30 minutes without knowing my audio was off, I basically fracked with the channel settings in Streamlabs and I bumped myself out. So, but I have since not touched any of the channel settings, so we should be golden. So if one of you guys want to start off, or I can start off. You let me know.
You can start.
Okay, I can start. Fine. Well, let's see. I started out as a graphic designer mainly, and I worked corporate for almost 15 plus years doing that. But then one day when I was sitting at work bored out of my mind, I started kind of designing what you see as my style now. I was messing around with, at that time I was doing mainly a lot of like filter work and then lasso tool, and just playing around with it. And I was doing a lot of fan art. And I had a friend named Sean who was like, you should do this stuff at C2E2, like do a Comic-Con. And I was like, no interest. Crowds give me the heebie-jeebies. They give me a lot of anxiety.
And that was before COVID.
Exactly. And whenever so people would always give me a hard time saying, you go to concerts and stuff all the time. I'm like, yeah, but I stand way in the back and I can get the fuck out of there if I have to, right? Like if I feel any kind of apprehension or anxiety building up, I just step outside and leave. But at a convention, you're kind of like trapped behind that table. So I was putting all these factors into play. But what he did was he signed me up for the show anyway. And he's like, you're going to do the show in the next 2 months. You're up to go. And at this point, I only had done 2 pieces of fan art. It was Boba Fett and Han Solo. And I was still kind of, like I said, trying to find my style. But then what I started doing was I started talking to artists, and I said, here's kind of what I'm thinking, and here's kind of the style I was looking into. And a lot of artists gave me a lot of tips on just using, so I started moving into the pen tool and in Illustrator and the lasso tool in Photoshop, which was great because it took me away from what, as Andrew and I discussed before, not using the cutout filter in Photoshop because it just looks like garbage. So I started developing my style there. The first convention, I remember, I basically had 4 feet of space, never split your table. I think, I want to say all of us have learned that lesson the hard way.
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I never had to do that. I skipped it altogether.
Not at a convention, but at like a small art fair in college.
Yeah, so I had a 4 foot long table. I met this artist named Will Burton, who's very, very talented. And that was my first go. The first artist I ever spoke to at these conventions was Corey Godby. If you know Corey, he's one of the nicest artists out there. He literally came over to the table and helped me. Like, I didn't even have a banner, okay? Like, it was a portfolio with 8 pieces of artwork at this point. I had 8 pieces of fan art. I had designed in a scramble iPhone cases. I had this specific infinity coin that I designed. I had to find a vendor on Alibaba that made these coins for me because in my head, I was like, I need something small because at that time I was selling prints at like $10, right? I was that guy.
Because I want to know what year it was without asking what year it was, what model iPhone was it?
5?
Oh man, I don't know what the model we're up to now, and I have an iPhone. I'm just like,
it's whatever model was existing in 2014. 2014 was the first year I got into this, and I found again on Alibaba, which if you guys are looking to make hats and phone cases and all that, Alibaba is a really good site, but it takes a little of time to talk to those vendors because there's that language barrier sometimes. So I basically found a vendor. I did a lot of late night calls with them where I explained what I wanted for the cases. And then for the coin, it was cool because one side had Thanos holding up the Infinity Gauntlet, and the other side had Lady Death, and it said "In Death I Trust." And if you know the comic books, that makes sense to you. And that was the quick item, like $5, you buy it, take it, put it in your pocket, whatever. So I worked that convention over a weekend, and I made like $800, and my take home was probably $300, right, at the end of the day. And I felt pretty good, but then I learned a lot. I was like, I didn't have a banner, I didn't have a tablecloth, my signage was whatever, so I learned how to, throughout the years, I learned little things from other artists. And if you guys have seen my booths now, it's giant banners and lights. And lights was a big thing, but they're expensive, so you got to save up for those. And if you don't have the power, if you don't have the money to pay for power, then you need a battery. So all that stuff comes into play.
A light battery.
Oh, yeah, yes. Andrew was the one. So anyone doesn't know that story, I have a battery that's basically a car battery that I carry around at conventions. I used to anyway. Now I pay for the power. It's like most shows are like $150 for power. You just pay it. If you have a booth, pay for the power because you obviously can afford the booth. But I got super hammered hanging out with Andrew once. And I had to carry this car battery around, and nobody would help me. And I carried that thing around for what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? Mm-hmm. I had some strong arms at the end of that day.
We were also walking around downtown Columbus. So like the show had ended and Allen brought it with him because
I have to charge it every night.
Yeah. And we weren't going back to their hotel yet. And we had to walk. Well, we were planning on walking to the hotel.
Yeah, we bar hopped to the hotel, basically.
And we just went to like 3 different places on our way to the hotel. And Allen had to carry it from the convention center all the way to each place, all the way back to the hotel. And he just complained and complained and complained. And all of us were like, nah, man, it's your battery. We're not carrying it.
This is your mistake. You deal with it.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just letting people know. Anyone watching, feel free to ask questions. It's an open forum. Yeah, so that's another lesson, right? In my head, I was like, this battery costs X. I have to charge it every night. I get a finite amount of juice out of it. So, like, typically a convention goes, 9 to 10 hours a day. The battery would give me 8 hours. But if I added more lights, then it reduces the timestamp. So depending on the show, paying for power is worth it. Some shows are very expensive in power. So do the math if you can afford it. But, I guess my one piece of advice for conventions is start out in Artist Alley versus I was in Artist Alley when I started. That was my first show, Artist Alley, but I split the table. Get your own table at Artist Alley. Usually costs about $400. And that's a good place to start because it'll tell you whether you like doing conventions for starters, if there's a fan base out there that likes your work, and then as you develop your style or you develop your art and you have tons, like Steph, you, for example, had skateboards, I remember, at Dragon Con, right? Like, oh my God. I mean, that feels like it would be a hard product to sell in Artist Alley, like, because the setup, right? You need the walls and you need the...
It's eye candy. That's what I use it for. Yeah, it's to draw people in. So.
They didn't sell? I'd be shocked to hear those.
I sell them sometimes, but it is not like my top seller.
Sure.
But usually the people who want them, they're just like, oh, like for the longboards, like $180, here you go, like no problem. Whereas like since it's very niche item, and I really kind of do it for myself, and I started by kind of doing those. So I continue to keep around for that basically. But yeah, I started with the longboards, and then I expanded to the skateboards as well. And then kind of been slowly raising the prices. I realized like when I would sell them, people would be like, that's a good price. And they would just like slam the money down. I'm just like, oh, like, okay. And I still don't make a huge profit on them because they are kind of expensive to make, sure. Especially since I only do them in very small batches because there's no point in getting huge batches done when I know I don't move them very much. But yeah, they do draw people in a good bit because they're just like, oh man, look at these, and then they see all the smaller stuff, and they usually go for the small stuff. So
yeah, because I remember your booth had a pin set, and then you had the apparel, and then you had the boards, and I was like,
oh man,
the
Dragon Con in 2019, man, I had so much that it was great. I had
I saw so much of the behind the scenes of that that booth.
Oh, really?
gosh.
I was right around the corner from her, so I was just like, I would just watch people walking in and out of there, thinking, that's a good setup. Like,
Well,
I
got
was super
there.
proud of that booth that year. That was
Yeah.
my first full year of doing conventions, and I did really well. I was really happy with it. But anyways, I just gonna. Are you done with your? I don't
Oh
want
yeah,
to like.
I mean, feel free to ask a
go
question
on
if you
with
got it,
mine.
but let's hear about. I want to hear about you. When was you? So you're saying 2019 was your first year doing
Oh.
conventions?
Yes. So my first convention was Dragon Con. It would have been 2018. The only reason that I did it was that because at the very start of 2018, I actually like a year or so before that, I'd been like kind of present and showing my face at different events. I'd done IMC years ago when I was like 19, before they raised the age to like you have to be 21, smartly so. And
Wait, what
I'd
show
gone
said
to
you had to be
events.
over?
For IMC, they require that you be at least 21 now.
Okay.
Before, when I first went, that was not the case. So I was I think it was like the second youngest person in that batch, which was like really intimidating and really eye-opening, especially when I was at a stage where it just like the school I was at wasn't challenging. It wasn't hard to be at the top of my class in my studio work, anything like that. But I had a terrible work ethic. So that was like a really good, at least 21 now. Just like, this is the reality of like who your competition is, where it's at.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. It like switched to a different channel, and then it switched to a private conversation, and then it dropped. And I was like,
that's weird.
So I was like, great. Everyone, so we're back.
But to wrap up my tangent here, I
Viewers
noticed
don't care, Andrew, about your Yu Yu Hakusho tangent. Okay.
I noticed in Yu Yu Hakusho, I think it might be the start of that anime trope where like the villains and the characters are like, I only need 20% of my power to defeat you. And like, I don't know, it's just so funny like to me that they do that in those shows, because I'm like, oh man, like I kind of want to do that like as an artist, where it's like you get a job that like doesn't pay well, and you're just like, I only need 10% of my power to do
this. So this was relevant. Oh, yeah. Just the way it tied it back in. Yeah. Relatable basically. But yeah, so if I don't know at what point it kind of cut off there, but yeah, basically in school, I wasn't performing at my best because my peers, I'm very externally motivated. So like the peers that I had around me, they're just like, it wasn't like a challenge to be at the top of the class. Like I'd kind of been through grade school and everything, but going to IMC really opened my eyes to like who my actual competition was out in the industry. And that really kind of started me on a path to really trying to get it together in terms of my work ethic and everything. So within a couple years, within a year or so, or I was like about to graduate or so, I ended up, again, I'd been kind of present at these events here and there. And then one year I decided, I was like, I'm going to take a smart school class with Dan Dos Santos. And I remember going to Dragon Con that year specifically to go. It was only like, it was one of the nights I was just like, I'm just going there just to go talk to him, just to show my face and be like, hey. And funny enough, and I went and I did that, and I was like, hey, he's like, I recognize you. Just to tell him, just like, I'm gonna be taking class. He's like, cool. So he'd remembered me from like the events I'd kind of been doing throughout the years. And at that point, I must have been like 24-ish, 23, 24 or so. And then he was just like, hey, you should come hang out with me and my buddies tonight. So I went drinking with them, same thing the night after that. So he started like inviting me to stuff here and there. And I took a smart school class. The plan was kind of for me to move up there and be his apprentice. He ended up finding someone else who was already in the area. But when I went to visit him for a New Year's party at the end of the year, so this would have been New Year's for 2018, then I guess he ended up mentioning like, hey, actually, like Annie and Justin Gerard are looking for an assistant. Would you still be interested in something like that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So he ended up getting me in touch with them, and I started working with them, and I worked with them for just about 2 years. And it was like the first year was pretty consistent. And so once I started working with them through 2018, early in the year, basically I would go in, I would take care of any shipping stuff. just kind of do orders and all of that, any other little side studio stuff that they needed, and then they'd give me feedback on my work, kind of give me advice. I got to pick their brain a lot about a lot of like business stuff and everything. So it ended up being slightly less on the technical side on like how to do the art and more on the business, which was a fantastic experience because really I got to see like such a wide game of our industry.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. With Annie and Justin, because they kind of they kind of hit our industry in different ways, where Annie does a lot more gallery shows, she does the traditional oil painting, and then Justin does a lot more freelance work, and she does the occasional freelance gig as well and everything, but so I was able to like really see the full span of it and kind of get their extensive histories and like how they got into it and like what how they got to the point that they were at. So what I felt like super lucky about is with all of like the information that they gave me and everything, and everyone that I'd kind of known up to that point, which was like my only entry point at that point, wasn't peers or mentors. It was like, oh, like I'm friends with Dan, like I'm now friends with like Annie and Justin, and so I was getting like a lot of information of like how they had done everything that they'd done over the last like 10, 15, 20 years, basically spanning like their entire careers and everything. So I was able to get like really acute directed like advice that allowed me to eventually end up skipping a lot of steps, basically, where it's just like, oh man, I was doing this for a while, like I had to grind, I had to hustle, this and that. It was just like, and I got a lot smarter in about how I was directing that energy. And the time that I was kind of putting into the portfolio that I was working on, and like the goals I had and everything, which was fantastic. But it was under Annie and Justin's insistence that I applied to DragonCon, and that was like early that spring in 2018. And I was just like, no, and I don't feel like I'm ready. And they're just like, you'll get in, you're ready, it's fine. And so, and I applied, and I was just like, and I had a few pieces and whatnot that I sent in. And sometime during the summer I get a call, and at that point it was basically they had a panel, and they would rank everyone, and anyone who gets in like within a certain point, like they get in. Now it's done differently. I think it's a lot more to taste now. But I'm not sure about the specifics of that.
They still have a jury.
Yeah, but they're not, I don't get the sense that it's nearly as transparent as it was previously.
Okay.
But again, like I don't know super well, especially because it's still so fresh, so no one really knows.
Tell us the secrets, Steph, come on.
But
who do I need to slip some money to?
Yeah.
Well,
what do we need to pay?
Because like early on, it was like getting all this insight from like Annie and Justin and Dan and like all of, but just Annie and Justin telling me just like all these ins and out. Like John is just like, oh, like this is how you do this. This is how you deal with these people. Like there's these quirks, this and that. So it was like really clearly laid out where I didn't have to like figure it out on my own, which is exactly why. During that time when I was really trying to, just like, I really want to do this as a career. Like my goal was, it's just like, I need mentors. I need people to kind of like, let me know like what to do basically. So I'm not struggling, and I'm not kind of like pawing around the dark, trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And so on their insistence, I applied and everything. I was just like, okay. And they called me back, and I guess it was like, he gave me a call, and
I know all about that call.
What was that?
I said, I know all about that call.
I got the call and everything, and I guess especially like being someone who's just like a fresh face within the community and everything like that. It was really reassuring, because not only I get it, but they kind of let me know. It's like, oh yeah, you were like in our top 20 basically of everyone that applied this year. I was just like, so that was like super, like a really good ego boost, because not only did I get in, like I ranked really, really well. So I was just like, okay, all right, cool. And 2018 was just a bit of a rough year for a number of. At the start of the year, I was like waitressing. I had previously been, I worked retail. I paid off a little bit of student debt that I had, so that was done with. I traveled for a while, and then I kind of settled back here in Georgia, and that's when I started working with Annie and Justin. waitressed for a little bit, and then during that summer I stopped waitressing because I knew I had Dragon Con coming up, and I was like, I want to put 100% of my attention on this. So I was like really focusing on prepping and everything. And I was just like, I gotta make a Dragon Con. I gotta, because it was again like just in that like headspace wise, it was just a rough year. I was like, I should just make it a Dragon Con, and I know it's just like that's gonna be like it's gonna give me the break that I need essentially. And that's basically what happened. I super duper lucked out, but and I say partially luck, partially by design, obviously. But I had that Dragon Con. It was my very first convention. I had prints. I think I had 5 or 6 prints. I had longboards. I had some originals. I don't think I had much else at the time other than that. That's it. And I made just under like $2,000 for my very first convention. I did not make any money. I lost a ton of money specifically because my goal for that weekend was just like, I'm going to network like a demon. Yeah. And it wasn't even in terms of like networking. It was just like, I'm going to make as many friends as I possibly can. Because right now in this industry, I don't have any peers. I don't have anyone who's like my age or at my level, or like, or like, even just like a level above me. Like I'm mostly talking to people who are just like who are a decade, 15 years, 20 years ahead of where I am, which was great because it got me to that point so far. So I decided it's just like, it doesn't matter how much I'm going to spend on like, I had like a nice, good, like simple setup. I got like pro boards, so the pro panel, so those were expensive. Getting the boards was kind of expensive. And I got a hotel room, which since I didn't know anyone, basically,
that's expensive.
I didn't split the cost of the hotel room, and it was only a couple blocks away from Dragon Con. But my thing was, I'm just like, I need to be close by. I need to like basically make sure I'm just there the whole time, making friends and meeting people. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And so even though I made just under $2,000, I ended up losing money up, but it was exactly what I planned it to be, basically, which is I met a ton of people, like really great, cool people within like the community, which later like led to, it's just like, kind of being accepted into like this little group, and then just that spawning into other connections and everything, like Andrew, for example, and I think you as well, Alan, and so I was able to do that. And
I almost did the same thing.
That's my go-to.
But I mean, I think you brought up a good point about doing like, Dragon Con is now it's a local show to you, right? You're not too far from that show.
No,
right?
I was local. Yes, I am. Okay. I am based out of Atlanta. Yeah, so I was out in like suburbia though. So I was like, at the time I was like a 45-minute drive out of the city and stuff. So that's why I was just like, I'm local, but no, I'm going to get a hotel. At the end of the day,
driving 45 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to pay like $2,000 for like, I think just the hotel room alone, I mean, like, just under $2,000, like $1,800 or something. And it was just me.
That was one of the points I want to make, was when you do your first conventions, if you can do local shows, it's easier. Like my first couple of shows were literally in the city. My other show was just outside in a suburb of Chicago. It took me maybe 30 minutes to drive to. Yeah. And it was like, at the end of the day, I went back to my own condo to rest up, right? Like, because you try to minimize your expenses so you can see. I mean, I love the fact that you went all in, but you also had the support and backing of all these well-known artists.
That's the thing, yes. Like, even at the start, like, I went hard and I went all in, but that's because I had the validation from my mentors, and also the confidence that I knew I was working at a level. And I had refined those skills behind the scenes for enough years before getting to that point to where it's just like, when it finally happened, it felt like an overnight success. But at the end of the day, it's just like, no, I was like prepping for years. And then it took someone telling me like, you're ready, go do the thing, for me to get out there and do that. But once I kind of had those little bits of validation start trickling, I'm just like, okay, I'm going hard. I'm not gonna like screw like struggling for like several years at a time and not like, making like, any profit on this. So I'm just like, no, especially because like even before, like I think I think when I was working with Annie and Justin, just before I started working with them, I came up with a very specific plan, and it was around when I was, I must have been like 24 or so, so just right before I started working with them. I had decided, it's like, okay, I'm giving myself a year and a half. I took out a credit card. It had a good limit on it. And I was just like, this is my funding for the next year and a half. If I am not making a living doing art in some capacity, either scraping by or in a studio or just doing something where I can get by on my own by the time I'm 26, then it's sheerly because, like, my logic was like, it's sheerly because I do not have the grit to do this that is necessary in our field. Because I have the funding, so I don't have any excuse of like, I don't have the tools, I don't have this, I don't have that. I'm just like, no, I'm not allowing myself any of those excuses. And I decided by the time I was 26, because at that point I'd be kicked off my parents' insurance. So I was just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So at that point it was just like, I gotta hit it super hard, and that's right. And thankfully it worked out. But yeah, so I did that Dragon Con. It was everything I needed it to be. I made some like awesome friends, awesome connections and everything. Someone was kind enough to take me under their wing and just like, oh yeah, like I work in like a studio in Atlanta working on slot games. And they're just like, I can help you put together a casino sample like portfolio. I was like, and that was so niche, I didn't even know about it. I'm just like, yeah, fantastic. And funny enough, gosh, within like, after that Dragon Con, within like, I think within 2-3 months, I had a studio job, and it wasn't even her studio. It was, I put one together with her one weekend really quickly because they ended up hiring, and they were looking for someone like a new illustrator to hire. So I like scrambled to get this thing, and she helped me out with it like a ton. And that didn't pan out. But at the same time, I was invited to do like a little panel at a tiny little show. Not even a show. It was like a conference for the game designers here in Georgia. So I went and did that. Someone I had done a little freelance gig for basically asked me to come along. He's like, hey, do you want to talk? And I didn't think I had anything to offer. I was just like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I almost turned him down. And Annie and Justin were just like, don't do that. Take on any opportunity you can. Any speaking opportunity, just do it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I go that weekend, and I was like, I'm waiting for like our panel to start. I'm just kind of like, they've got one of the ballrooms set up and lots of little like people like showing off their games, and there was a table set up for another company that I'd come across when I'd been applying to this other one. I was like, I know that's a casino game. I was like nicely dressed. Everyone else was just like not. Everyone else was like super casual. And I had my tablet, and I had my portfolio on there, and I'm just like, I got this. And I go up to them, and I just like, whoo, I did so well. And that by the end of the conversation, like they ended up having the art director there, one of their producers, and I talked to them. I showed them like my portfolio, and eventually I'm just like, oh yeah, that's my illustration, but I actually also have a slot sample. And they're just like, really now? And so by the end of the conversation, he's telling me, she's like, send me your stuff. It was a weekend. Send me your stuff Monday morning, and we're gonna start getting you in the pipeline, because they were hiring. And it was just like that. And it was just like, if it wasn't for the people like pushing me, and especially being like people who I respect so highly in the industry. So it's like, it's not just a friend, it's not a parent, it's just like, and not to be dismissive of other people's like, opinions or anything like that. Yeah. But it's just like, at that point, my mentality was, it's just like, if anyone's going to know like whether or not I'm good at this, it's going to be someone that I look up to, who I know has already succeeded at this, like everyone else's opinions is kind of moot to me, because I'm just like, of course you love it. It's just like, it is above,
the rest of the slopes don't mean anything.
Yeah, it's just like, it doesn't shit.
Who cares what
and of course, you always appreciate it, but it's not the same. So if it wasn't for those people like pushing you, it's just like, no, you're ready. Do the thing. The thing. You're ready. It just this being a different topic altogether, but I do definitely feel like looking back, and even at the time, I kind of realized a part of it is a very like gendered kind of thing where it's just like a female, it's just like, I need to keep prepping, like I'm not ready. Whereas guys will go, it's just like, doesn't matter, let me just try. Like I don't know if I'm good enough, and they just go, they're more prone to going into
I think there's a mixed
like
bag
that,
of
being more
like.
assertive about it.
I think some artists are very much ready to jump into like a studio job or freelance. Like Andrew does a lot of freelance too. But like I myself I had 2 runs at it. One was great. One was super stressful. And then I've had a couple people reach out since then to do more freelance work. And I've always been kind of like, I've had conversations with Andrew where it's like, I don't think I'm ready for freelance. Versus a lot of people say, I think you are ready, just do it. But I'm like, no, you don't understand how stressed out I got trying to. So it's like half and half for me, right? Like as much as I want to work. Yeah, Andrew remembers that because he'd be up late at night with me where I'd be like, look at this piece. Does it look okay to you? Look at this piece. What did I do wrong here, right? Because because when it's your own artwork, you're like, this looks great, I'm good to go. But when it's like something that's going to show up, like these are board game companies. So it's like something that's going to show up in a board game. Thousands upon thousands of people are going to see it. I don't want them to look at it and be like, this guy's totally screwed this up. Like.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, that's just like, that's also partially why, like, one of my tactics early on was it's just like, to go about it. I'd kind of like laid out plans. I'd set up checkpoints where I'd like rehash it, just like, okay, am I making progress? Of like, where am I now, etc. And it's still something that I do, which I think helps keep me on track for my goals and everything. But one of my plans was just like, my preference was to not get freelance jobs, but to get a studio job, because I knew I wasn't quite cut out for freelance quite yet in terms of like the lifestyle you have to be able, like, and the discipline you have to have, working on your own from home, doing freelance stuff. So I was just like, if I get a studio job, then like I can work on a team. I do really well, again, that external motivation. I do really well with working on teams, working with other people when I can like see directly, impacting them and like them, relying on me to do stuff. So I figured like if I get the studio job, I can like at least build up that sort of work ethic that I need, like really kind of get more of my portfolio, etc. The plan was also just like, I'll buy a house, because then the student job will show that I can, I will be able to help me get a mortgage, because freelancing.
Keep talking, all right? I'll be right back. I gotta get these keys to my wife.
But yeah, so that was kind of, so I was able to get that studio job and everything within a couple of months of doing that Dragon Con. And then it was just kind of like all up from there. And so that would have been, let's see, between the year that I did my first Dragon Con and my second Dragon Con, completing one full first year of doing conventions, I got that studio job. And even then I continued hustling, and outside of my normal work day, I would keep working on stuff to do other conventions. And from Andy and Justin's suggestions, I decided, like, because they were able to tell me like they had been doing conventions for so long, especially Annie being from the area, she was just like, oh yeah, these suck, this is good, this is, this is a bad one, this is a good one. I figured, like, you know what? I already have a studio job. I'm going to avoid any small conventions. Like, if it's not going to be worth my time or worth the money or anything like that. So I think I only did about 5 shows, and maybe 5-6 shows in total that first year. I think 2 were a loss. By that summer, by that May, I did 2 conventions, and it was the first conventions that I hit 3K at both of them.
Yeah.
And then by Dragon Con, I was able to hit my goal for that weekend of 6. So from my very first one doing just under 2, within a year having the studio job and hitting 6 at that Dragon Con, which is just like, for standard numbers or anything like that. Not to like be showboaty or anything like that, but it's just like that was like a really quick trajectory. But
Damn, brush your shoulder off. What I want to get
at is I was just like, just having those mentors who had all that information already. It was just, oh my gosh, it was just I was so lucky for that.
As the kids say, sheesh.
Come on. Okay, I want to actually. I don't mean to cut you off, Steph, but I actually want to have a chance to talk. Jerk. Yeah, that's fine. I want to hear about Andrew's too, because I actually have something to say about. We'll come back to it, but I want to talk about.
You're just biased because you're involved in mine.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
You're part of the story.
Oh
But,
no! Well, no.
yeah,
I want to talk
like
about.
that.
I want to talk about.
Really
I want to talk
show.
about the mentors, and I want to talk about, you know, winning and losing at conventions too. But I also want to talk about. I want to hear from Andrew about his couple. Yes, of course. I've known Andrew for a number of years, and whatever. Andrew was a little pipsqueak when I first met him. Pipsqueak.
Pipsqueak. Yeah. My first. Let's see here. So I guess we have to go back to 2015. When I had just moved back from Boston, I'd been working a graphic design job at Reebok, where I did like advertising and stuff for their in-house production studio. And then while I was out there, I had ordered some screen prints and from a local printer out there, and they did a great job. I wish I remembered the name to shout them out right now in case they still were printing. But I posted online or whatever, and this guy, Allen, followed me and liked those prints. And then a few like months later, I moved back to Columbus, and I left Reebok, and I get a message from this guy who's just like, "Hey, I really like those screen prints that you got made a while ago. Like, I'm thinking about getting some screen prints myself made. Like, where'd you get those made?" And I passed along the information and everything, and that was pretty much it. And then a few weeks later, I grew up in Indianapolis, and so I went home to visit family. And
Hold on, I asked about screen prints, and you thought I'm gonna do conventions.
No, I'm leading to that. Thank you, sir.
Oh.
This is the origin story.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't interrupt your origin story, sir.
My bad.
So then I went home for like a random weekend after I'd been in Columbus for a little bit, and I was visiting my parents, and I get on Facebook, and this random guy who I had only talked to a little bit about screen prints posted on his Facebook, "Oh hey, I'm at Indiana Comic Con this weekend. If you're in the area, like come check out booth number 240 whatever." And say hi. And I was like, well, shit. I was like, I'm like 15 minutes from the convention center. I got a spare $25 to spend on a badge for the day. Why not? And I grew up going to like Gen Con and stuff like that. So I knew like I was going to, get my $25 worth going and walking around and talking to some artists. And so I go in there, and my dad comes with me, and I go up to this table, and I'm just like, "Oh, hey, like you're Allen, right?" And he's just like, "Yeah." And I was just like, "Oh, I'm Andrew, the guy that you asked about those screen prints." And he was just like, "Oh shit."
I had no idea
yeah.
what Andrew looks like at this point.
I was like, yeah, I happened to be in Indiana because like I was visiting family, and I saw you post that you were here, and I figured why not come and meet you. And so we were chatting for a little bit, and he was telling me like, "Oh, like, you should totally do one of these. Your work would be great for this. Like, you totally make bank, blah, blah, blah." And then he sent me over to talk to one of his buddies, who I also went over to talk to. They told me similar things, and I was like, well, maybe I should try doing a convention, because I hadn't really tried to do one. I had gone to them as a kid. I'd gone to Gen Con, and I'd seen, all the Magic the Gathering artists and stuff like that, but I didn't realize, the thought never crossed my mind, like, oh, I should do one of these. I could maybe make some money. And I started looking at conventions for that year, because I was like, okay, like, I'm the type of person that, like, if I think I should do something or try to do something, if I don't do it, like, soon, I'm just going to, like, forget about it and lose steam and never actually follow through on it. So
relatable.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why you and I get along, because we just like have a thought of like, should I do this? And then like the next day we're like, I'm doing this.
It's like, I have the momentum now. I need to do it. Otherwise, in a week it'll be gone.
But every once in a while now,
like,
I think
we're already like so far into the process of like getting it done after like a day.
Well, I think with me though, you're like, I think lately with me, you've been like, slow down. Like, I'll come up with idea after idea, and Andrew will be like, wait, man, just take a minute.
Well, that's because you have like a million ideas going on at once of just like, oh, I'm, moving to a new house. Like, I'm selling my condo.
Imagine what I can do if I had some money.
getting everything set up in the house, getting like rooms painted, like dealing with contractors, all this.
And then I'm like, I'm gonna go paint the Sistine Chapel while I'm at it, guys. And then Andrew's like, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna
or
die.
like when you were still like getting the layout of the book figured out, you're like, oh, I have all these ideas for the second book, and I'm like, Alan,
Yeah.
wait till the first book is shipped,
Yeah. I was
then
like, fine.
second book. But yeah, like I'm very much a person who, it's like, if I don't do it, I'm never going to. And so I told myself, okay, find a convention that is still taking like applications that I can still apply to, that I can still get into, and just do one. And I found Grand Rapids Comic Con, which I
Mhm.
was not smart and did not pick a place that was local, did not pick a local show. I picked one that I had to drive like 6 hours to, but it was drivable. So I found Grand Rapids Comic Con. Artist Alley was already like, I missed the deadline for that, so it was just an exhibitor booth, and I was like, well, it'll cost $400, but it'll give me an idea of what this is like. So why not? So I went ahead and
Which is a great
paid
cost,
for
by
it.
the way, for an exhibitor booth.
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And then I ended up splitting a hotel room with a friend of mine. Well, at the time I was working on this comic with like a independent writer, and so it was him, and he had never done a convention, so we figured like, okay, like he like never even attended a convention, so this was like him just like diving
Oh,
into
he
the
dove
deep
right
end.
in.
Yeah. Which was, oh my God, it was so funny to watch. But anyway, we shared a hotel room, and it was a fun weekend. Like I learned a lot. I had, I had tried to study all these artists that I followed on Instagram to see how to like set up my booth, and everything was hung up with like strings and laundry like hooks or like clips, like little
Mhm.
wooden like clips behind me. And it took forever to get that damn backdrop set up, but I got it set up. I took um, a bunch of prints and stuff that I had made with me. I had a big canvas print that I took with me. I started out having everything set up where it's like people had to walk into the booth to talk to me. And then somebody ended up telling me like, oh no, you should, like, one of our friends at the time recommended that I move everything like to the front, and then, not
Yeah, a
have
walk-in booth
space for
should never
people to walk.
happen unless you do the S curve.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like that weekend, I think I ended up spending like a total of like, my costs were probably like $800. I think I made that back. So I like broke even. And for our first show, like I was happy with that. I was just like, oh, this was super fun. I got to meet a bunch of people, made a bunch of connections, um, saw some familiar faces there. Met some people who I still am friends with now. Like I met Pooey there. Like Pooey, that was like the first time I ever met Pooey. He was like walking past my table, and all of a sudden, like
Did you
did
walk
one
by
of
with
those, like,
bananas?
no, he was like speed walking like back to his table, and he like almost went past, and then he like stopped and was like, and then came back and was like talking to me for a little bit. And so like that was the first time I met him. And yeah, after that point, I was like, okay, I want to do more of these. This was super fun. I learned a lot. I think I can make profit at the next one. And then after that, I started making profit.
Mhm.
So that was fortunate. There was only one other. There's only been one show that I didn't make a profit at, and it was Wizard World Columbus. Fuck Wizard World. Like
Fuck
they
Wizard
suck.
World. I'll back that up.
They're so bad, so bad.
They turn into mainly vendor shows, and then they turn into all autographs.
Yeah.
And that screws you
like,
over as an artist.
Yeah, because all the people who were there just wanted autographs or were waiting on autographs, and so they were just walking around killing time. And you'd be like, "Oh, hey, like, here's my art," and they'd just be like, "Oh, like we're just looking, we're waiting for our autograph." And I'm like,
Yeah, they're like, I spent $300 on this autograph that I'm gonna meet this guy for 5 minutes. They won't remember my face or my name.
I will say the one highlight that came out of that show was I had the guy who plays Luke Cage in the Netflix like Luke Cage series walk by my table at one point, and I was like so like zoned out, and like it was in convention mode, so like anybody that like comes into my peripheral vision, it just gets hey, how's it going? Like enjoying the show?
Yeah.
And I like this guy just like walks in my peripheral, and I'm just like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he looks over at me, and it's him, and I was just like, "Oh, like."
Yo, Luke Cage.
And well, I didn't say anything else after that, but then he looked down at my artwork, and then he looked at me and was like, gave me a thumbs up, and I was just like, I was like, that's cool. If I had made a little bit more money, this would have been worth it for that story,
Sure.
because it was like he's just as good looking as he is in the show, but he just like walked by and looked at my art and was like,
it's always fun when you meet like at like those conventions where you meet the random actors and you're just like they're just like people. Like I met the dude who plays Punisher.
They're just like people.
They're just like regular people.
They're
But you
just
think
like people.
Well, you think they're gonna just brush you off half the time, right? Like the guy who plays what's his name, John Berthal or whatever. The guy who plays Punisher was at Dallas Fan Expo one day when one show I did with when Punisher first came out. And he was like walking by the booth casual, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, man? I love you on the show." And he was like, "I can't talk right now. I'm super busy." And he said it in such a way where me and the artist next to me were like, "Damn," you know. And he just kept walking. And I was irked for like a minute. I was just trying to be nice. And my cousin was like, "That was super rude." But like this dude came back like an hour and a half later, and he apologized. He was like, "Hey, man, I just wanted to apologize for being rude earlier." And I was just like, I don't remember you being rude, you know, like, I don't remember what you said to me. I'm sorry. And he goes, I was in a hurry. He apparently was doing a Punisher signing and didn't own a Punisher shirt. So what he was doing was running to the vendors to buy a Punisher shirt. That's what he told me. He goes, I didn't own the shirt. I had to go buy the shirt.
Many booths that have them. I was like, okay.
Yeah, he's like, I ran over to the shirt vendors to get a Punisher shirt. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So he was, you know, like, and then occasionally, like, sometimes you don't want to, like, bother. Like, I worked Dave Seeley's booth at San Diego Comic-Con, which was one of my first times working that show ever. I always thought I'd go there as a person working the show, but I was there as a person helping at a booth, which is whatever. It was a good in. You know, 14-year-old or 12-year-old me was like on cloud 9 the whole time I was there. But Claudio from Coheed and Cambria was at the booth, and I remember, I think you guys know Reno.
Oh, Nito.
Reno was at the booth with me, and I just leaned into her. I'm like, I think that's Claudio from Coheed. But I want to be like, yo, are you Claudio? And he just kind of stood there, looked at his stuff, and then walked away. And I was like, well, there goes that opportunity. Then he came back like a minute later, and I was like, fuck it. And I was like, yo, are you Claudio from Coheed? And he's like, yeah, man. And we got like a 20-minute conversation. I was showing him my work. I took a photo with him.
That's neat.
You know, I'm thinking about getting, you know, like, and you know, like, and I didn't think he'd remember me after that, but he was there at 2019 and he remembered me. And he was cool. He's a really, and that's when I was just like, these guys are all cool if you're cool with them. Like, if you're not hounding them.
He seems super chill. He seems like he's
so
like
chill.
A really like average, like laid back person.
He sounds nothing like his singing voice. He's got a.
Oh, you mean it's not just super high pitched all the time?
He sounds like this when he talks. It's like a very deep voice. I'm just like, that is not the voice I expected to come out of that body. But but yeah, I remember. So like Andrew, I remember you've done a couple shows with me, and I think over the years I've seen you like just grow,
blossom into a beautiful butterfly.
I was trying
colorful butterfly.
I was trying to, colorful. Yeah. Like, look at the jacket he's wearing right now, ladies and gentlemen. He's wearing the shiniest
red jacket.
Yep. Sent a photo of this to me earlier. I didn't believe it actually existed, but there it is. You know, shows up wearing a plastic garbage bag.
He works it much better than I did.
Well, because I sent the picture of Steph wearing it, and then Allen like freaked out about it, and I immediately texted Steph in all caps. I was like, "Don't you dare tell him that you don't own that jacket, because I want to blow his mind." Yeah,
he jumped you. I wish I should have let you keep the camera off till we went live, because I was like, "Turn your camera on so the rest of us can see you." And it's like, there it is.
I thought about. I was like this close to being like, oh, like I'm eating my Pop-Tarts. Like I'll turn it on once we start recording. But then I just like turned it on because
it was a bright jacket. So I wanted to talk about, so when I mentioned that you shouldn't do a walk-in booth unless you do the S-curve, but I feel like Steph, you're very successful at Dragon Con with a walk-in booth. I think it takes a specific show and a specific setup, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've done the walk-in booth at like, I did it in, so you were talking about how you did 5 shows one year, and like there was a year where I was work from home basically. I work corporate, and then one year they decided we're gonna move the offices, and for a whole year we're just gonna all go work from home. And while that year I basically decided I'm gonna do as many shows as I can and I'm gonna figure out which shows are good for me, which shows are bad. And I had done, I think it was either like 17 or like 19 shows that year. It was a lot. And I didn't have a kid back then, so it was a little bit easier to do it, right?
Okay.
I was just doing show after show. But I did a bunch of local ones. I did a bunch of ones I could drive to, and I did, Cincinnati was the show that I did this first time I did a walk-in booth, and that was the farthest I drove for a show. Like Dragon Con and stuff I flew into. But like I remember that what I took away from that was I tallied up all my numbers and I figured out which shows are the best shows for me. So nowadays I only do like Dragon Con, Gen Con, Origins where Andrew lives. I do C2E2 because it's local, and then if I want to, I might sprinkle in 1 or 2 more shows. But for the most part, I only do 4 or 5 shows a year because that was a bananas ass year.
They're so, and like I like plenty of respect to the, oh my god, sorry, I've got my cat in my lap and my hands are going up and there's just fur everywhere. Yeah, conventions are so draining because it's not just 3 days. No, it's all the prep time in the week beforehand. It's the thing, and then it's the show itself, and then it's afterwards because it's just like, oh, getting everything ordered, like selling back in my studio, possibly, like more than likely getting over con crud because I'm sure I've caught something. So it's just like, it's a lot of respect to the people who do tons of them, but like at least in my career, how I want, like how I'm kind of like currently like angling it to be, I'm like, I am not going to be doing any more than at the most like 8 shows a year, and that is a lot. Like preferably around like 6 to 8, but it's just like if I'm going to do a show, I'm going to hit like the really big ones. I'm not going to bother with tiny ones, especially if I have to take a time off from work and stuff. And even right now, I'm kind of like planning on being able to eventually move into just doing freelance work and conventions and combining those two together. But it's just like, I'm still trying out shows here and there, but for me, it's just a matter of just like, one, I'm super lucky that I'm in like a good hub in my region, and Atlanta's got some like pretty good big shows, including Dragon Con, and there's a few other ones. There's MomoCon. Some of the ones that I do really well at furry conventions because I have like animal stuff. So it's just like animal adjacent. It's furry adjacent. They're just like, I can wear this out and not have people look at me weird. It's just a wolf. I'm like, yes, you can. But even like by that summer, I was at a point where it's just like, I am not going to bother doing any show that I am not like easily set to make at least 2K at, because it's just not worth it. It's just so much time. It's so much effort. It's just, if I have to travel, even worse.
Yeah. Cause you got to calculate your expenses. It's not just your expenses. It's your expenses. It's also your like mental health. Like, it's like, like when you do a show, like, for example, when I do Gen Con or Dragon Con and like all you guys are there, so all my friends are there. So then when I get back, there's like a week of me decompressing where it's like I miss all my art friends. Like you go to like the LuxCon, right? And you're there for like 4 days networking and there's nothing but artists there. It's like an artist family hangout. And then when you're home for like that show takes me almost a week or 2 almost to recover from, because it's like you only see some of those artists like once a year, and it's
you have to go hard when you see them.
You're and you like hang out, and you're just like, I want to spend as much time as I can with these guys. You don't sleep, and then
I have
like
to cram as much energy and attention that I would express to you in a year in one weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like we could talk like this on calls and stuff, but it's not the same, right? So then, like, there's all these factors that you don't consider when you do shows, especially like I said, I don't like being crowded at places, so there's that. It takes its toll on you after a while. Like Gen Con is one of those shows which is like Gen Con and Dragon Con are like non-stop, right? You don't get like, if you get a break in the middle of that show, it's maybe 5 minutes, it's 10 if you're lucky. But it's like go for like 9 or 10 hours.
Yeah. I don't know how I like mustered up that first Dragon Con. Oh my God. I was just like, I think across the span of like 3 days, I got like 8 hours of sleep. And I look back and I'm like, I have no idea how I did. I think I did it because I needed to. And I was just so fucking hungry.
It's that convention endurance.
Yeah, you get that, that convention energy kicks in, right? Like, my first Dragon Con, I remember, I think it was 2015 when I got in. And I remember I shared a room with Sasha Jones, if you know him, and 2 other people. And like, I remember that first night, I got in and I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm not good enough for the show. Because I walked around after I set up and everybody's work there was like at a 10. And I was like, man, you're barely a 4 and you're at this show. And I had Ancient One stuff at this point. There's no fan art on the table. It was 100% my own work. It was all from the stories, but I only had like, I think I had a good 8 or 10 pieces still, but it was very nerve-wracking because I wasn't known or anything. And I remember when I was back in the room that night, I was like, I didn't sleep because in my head I was like, you're totally gonna fail tomorrow. Like, what do you, like, I literally was like on the verge of tears. I was like, what are you fucking doing here? You don't belong in this show. Because Dragon Con's like, Gen Con and Dragon Con both feel like a different level, right? Like, you're surrounded by these like top tier artists. Dragon Con's got like legacy artists in it, right? Like Todd Lockwood's there, for Christ's sake. I'm like, fucking Todd Lockwood's here. What am I doing here? You know, like Annie and Justin are there, right? And you see their work, and you're like, man, you're not gonna sell shit here. These guys are gonna sell everything, right? Yeah. But I sold out of everything, and it blew my mind, right? I was just like, I went home with I think like 3 playmats out of all the playmats I had, and maybe like a couple prints I just ended up giving away because I was like, I don't want to take any of this shit home with me.
And what year was that?
I think it was 2015. Because 2014 is when I started, and I think the very next year I started applying for shows. Or maybe. Yeah, it was either 2015 or 20. Yeah, I think it was 2015.
You had playmats back in 2015? I feel like playmats weren't like a thing back then.
It's either 2015 or 20. I'm pretty sure it's 2015, 2016.
Maybe 2016 because when I first met you in 2015, I don't remember playmats, and you still had
prints.
Fan art
the fan art. So it's probably 2016.
Because I
think I went a solid year with fan arts.
Yeah, I got a Jace piece from you in 2015. So.
That Jace piece, I loved it.
It was either 2016 or maybe even 2017. Was that the year that you did Origins and you were in Columbus? Because there was the one year that I helped you guys work Origins.
That was I think Origins was 2017.
Done Origins yet? Yeah.
Yeah, Origins was one of those shows where I never heard about it. I've heard about Gamma. I knew Gamma was a big thing, and then somebody told me about Origins, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to do it. The problem was somebody compared it to being a mini Gen Con. And my anxiety went straight up, right? I was like, like that show was stressful. And it's not really like stressful, like, it's not like people are showing up at your table and giving you a hard time. I think I dealt with one troll the whole time I've been at Gen Con, maybe 2. One troll and one asshole. Let's just go with that. Yeah. But, so in my head, I was like, Origins is also in Ohio, so it's like a 6-hour drive. And I'm like, can I do a 6-hour drive? Which, obviously I can, because I did it. But, it's like I forget where I was going with this, but yeah, like my point is like you have this anxiety where you feel like you're gonna fail, and you don't know how well you're gonna do until you actually do the damn thing, right? Like
to backtrack a little bit, just to kind of give a little more context as well. Since you were saying you had fan art and stuff, I'm wondering like what your like as you guys were doing conventions, like what did you have? Like I've only exclusively ever had my own original work. I've never done fan art of any kind.
I started out with,
what about you guys?
I did fan art when I started because it was, like I said, it was just me goofing around drawing stuff at at my desk in my office this one day, and I leaned into fan art because as a person who grew up going to Comic Cons, I've been going to Comic Cons since I was like 10 or 11 with my cousins, and then as I got older, I would go to Wizard World when it used to be awesome here in Chicago, right? C2E2 eventually took over a lot of the Wizard World stuff. So fan art was something I leaned into as easy because I love comic books. And in my head, I was like, I love drawing Spider-Man and Batman and all these comics that I love. But I think what shifted me into the personal IP stuff was I was writing the series forever. And I was trying to find an artist to illustrate the series. And then one of my friends was like, why don't you just illustrate your own stuff? Like, you obviously are an artist. You might as well do your own stuff. And I was like, not a bad point. But I didn't feel like I had leveled up to where I wanted to be. And I finally did it one day because Andrew knows about, there's a clusterfuck of an event where somebody was trolling me at a show. But on top of that, I was talking to another artist who was like, oh, he has beautiful fan art, but he's like, I've been doing this for, I think he said like 17 years or something. And in my head, I was like, I don't want to get stuck doing fan art for 17 years. You
don't want to get stuck like doing
I don't want it to sound like it's a bad thing. Like
does this this one boxed in thing, yeah.
Sure, I don't want to sound like a bad thing. Like if you do fan art and you all of a sudden, let's say, get jobs with Marvel or DC or Image Comics or an indie comic company, awesome, right? Like you're working and doing.
Heard it here first, folks. AllenPanakal against fan art.
Oh, dude, come on! Oh, God. You're killing me. That's not what I said. Someone's gonna take just that clip. It's gonna be a thing. But if you don't have the ambitions of working in a comic house or something, I would not consistently do fan art, right? Because like then you kind of get pigeonholed into that, which was what it felt like this artist was. And in my head, I was like, I don't want to do that because there's no I got to a point where I'm like, if you're good enough to do the fan art and it looks amazing, and you want to do your own IP, you probably can, and it will look just as amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so it's the age of the IP, man. If you got ideas for stories or your own artwork, do it. It'll, in my opinion, do better than the fan art side of things. But again, it depends on what you want for your future.
Yeah,
right?
it depends, because it's just like, especially with like social media nowadays, you know, it's a lot of people do fan art because it's just like, yeah, it's a really good way, because it's like people get it, it's relatable, it's, you know, it's already has like a history and people already have a connection to it. And so it's just like, oh, like you want to get good, like you want to get numbers fast, like, yeah, do tons of fan art. So that's why like it's so that's like one of the good things. But then yeah, it's just kind of like, and I've seen like plenty of people do like a good transition.
I had a pretty easy transition. Like my fans were, and so, I lost a bunch of them.
Using that platform that you've already built on the fan art. And so I've seen people do that, but then, and it's just like, sometimes I've seen people where it's just like, oh, they only do their original stuff and they get no numbers, they get no traction, but their work is incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
I mean, when I slowly, goals, yeah. I remember I had half the table was fan art, half the table was Ancient One stuff. And then when people would come to get like, you know, a piece of fan art that they saw at a previous show and they can get it now, I'd be like, check out this new stuff I'm working on. And then they would maybe buy a piece. And then slowly I started like, you know, it was like 50-50. Then it was like, like 60-40. And then eventually it was just all Ancient Ones, right? Like the fan art just went away. And then I had people who would come to the shows and be like, oh, I was hoping to pick up, you know, your Spider-Man piece or your Batman piece or something. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't sell that anymore.
You have to phase it out eventually.
It was just gone. I literally burned the remaining prints.
Like, no more.
I didn't want to be tempted into having to try to sell those. So I just burned them one day in pure rage.
Pure rage. Okay.
Pure rage. Yeah, Andrew knows the story.
Yeah. But what about you, Andrew? So what is your like how much fan art do you end up with? Or like, did you start out with? What has been like the course for you on that?
Yeah, so I too started with some fan art on the table when I first started doing conventions. Part of that is because I had been super into some different like pop culture galleries, like Gallery 1988, Gallery Nucleus, Gray Matter Art, so just some of those like pop art galleries. And so I had spent my time out in Boston at Reebok, messaging them, and I basically sent in a portfolio of work one day, which, like, if anybody is listening and wants to get into doing like gallery stuff, or there's a gallery or some place that you think you would fit into, just email them, send them your stuff, be like, hey, I think I would be a good fit. That's literally what I did. And like a month later, they were like, hey, yeah, we agree. Here's a list of shows that we have. Like, if you want to do any of them, let us know. And that's how I started doing work with them. And through submitting a couple projects or a couple pieces to them for different group shows, I eventually got a couple freelance jobs through them. Like I did some Blu-ray covers for Sony through them. I got to do like an official Star Wars show. So like I got to do some really cool projects like with the gallery. And I was using some of those as prints to sell at cons and stuff. As well as after I started doing cons for like the first year, which when I say for the first year, it was like I did 4 shows in like 2016 probably. And
I mean, for your first year, that's a lot of shows.
I mean, I guess. But anyway, after
you had a full-time job you had a studio job at the time, or?
Well, no. When I first started doing that, I was already back in Columbus, and I was teaching and doing some freelance here and there, like small freelance jobs, and then doing like a few shows here and there when I could. And so after like 2016 of doing like those few shows, I started to get some freelance work from people I met at those shows and doing some board game, tabletop game stuff. And that I started then to sell some of the stuff I was doing for like cover art for those games because I retained the rights. And that's something that if you do freelance, try to retain the rights to your work if you can. And if you can't, charge more.
Correct.
And know where your limit is of like, okay, they're paying me enough. It's fine. I don't care. But so I kind of started out with fan art, and then I started to transition to fan art plus client work. And then in 2018, so I had been, 2 years of doing maybe like 4 to 5 shows a year, switched to started doing personal work. And the first show I had personal work at, I immediately, like, the personal work blew the previous high seller out of the water. Like, I had this Zelda print that for ages, for every show I had it at, had been the top seller. It had always sold like 10 to 12 copies, like every time, or
I have it.
Sometimes
I
more.
probably dig it out.
Yeah, like it's one of those ones where I look at it and I'm like, I still like this. Like I still think it's nice. I don't hate it yet as an artist. And the first show that I had my first 4 pieces of personal work at, like, I had a series in that called Banishment, and the whole series of Banishment just like completely blew the Zelda print out of the water. Like, I think I sold like 20 of each Banishment print, and like the Zelda print like barely sold 10 at that show. And I was like, holy shit. Like, this completely decimated the Zelda print. And from that point on, like, the personal work always outsold the fan art. And when I do my fan art stuff, like, I say this to my classes because I do teach college illustration courses. I always tell because I always get the question of like, is fan art okay? Like, should I not do fan art? Like, can I sell that? And I'm just like, well, you kind of can't sell it, but it's also a weird gray area. And you're probably not going to get in trouble unless you're making like ridiculous amounts of money.
Yes.
But I also add the caveat of like, fan art is totally fine because like it's not something that you should be shamed about doing, because it's a way for you to showcase what you could bring to the table for a client. Because you can be like, hey, look, this is what I could do for you with your IP, whether it's that IP that you're doing, like if you're doing a Batman piece or whatever, or if it's, somebody else looking at it and going like, oh, that's a really cool Batman. Like, they're seeing like what you could do for them using their IP. Yeah. And so I always tell my students, I'm always like, if you do fan art, do something different. Don't just do a screenshot. Like, you see people at cons selling, $10 prints of Thanos, and it's just a paint over of a screen grab, and it doesn't look as good as the actual shot. Like, don't do that. Make something.
I think on that note as well. It's like the only reason, like, I like not to be just like, oh, like I didn't do fan art because it's just like, I'm not gonna, like, no, it wasn't that. It was very simply because I have no attachment to any IPs. Like, and
Steph hates everything.
I have a bunch of this and that. Like, I did a bunch of shows I love.
Everything.
But not to the point where I'm just like, I wanted to pick this. I'm just like, that's simply what it's always been for me. There's nothing that's like struck a chord with me. Yeah, except Bob's Burgers. But yeah, there's really nothing that struck enough of a chord with me to where I'm just like, man, I really have to do that thing. And I think that's the part of like, it's just like, you can, like, there's so many vendors out there who just do it like, they just do it in like this mass scale where there's just like, as another artist, you're just like, obviously it's just a cash grab, and it's just like, which, find to each their own. But as someone who is just like, no, like, this is like, I want to be able to look back on my career and like, to make sure I have a body of work that is fulfilling to me. It's not just about the money and stuff. But what I've heard recommended a lot of artists is just like, if you're going to do fan art, make sure it's something like you're not just doing it for the sake of just like, oh, there's a hype train about this like right now. Do it because it's something that you enjoy and you really appreciate, because that's going to come across. And it's clear when then that's not the case, and you're just like, okay, they're just kind of jumping on the bandwagon. So like that love and that care for for that content will definitely come through and stuff. So for me, I just never felt like I had that to give and to put into a piece that was, that was content and just, it just property of like someone else.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no, it's just like, it just wasn't my thing. I just didn't have the interest in it. But not to say, just, it's not like no one should do it. Obviously, like you can.
Yeah.
But I think it's a smart way to go about it.
We're totally interpreting this as Steph is very against fan art.
I was interpreting it as Steph hates comic books, period. But apparently loves.
I just want to see I just want to see your interpretation of Bob's Burgers.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I was gonna say you apparently love Bob's Burgers, but I haven't seen it.
That would probably be fun to do. Honest, I do adore Bob's Burgers. I'm sure you've seen on my Hulu history. Just like constantly back at the top. It's like why
I never finished that. Did it end or is it still going?
It's still going. It's on season 11.
Okay, I had a Hulu subscription that my friend and I were sharing, and then one day he decided he didn't want to renew it, and then I've never finished it. And I'm just like, damn.
To give some context, I use Steph's Hulu account, so that's why I'm using her about Bob's
Hulu's
Burgers.
coming for you, man.
Always.
That's the problem with sharing accounts. Everyone else sees your weird, whatever it is you like.
My shame.
Well, it's like serial killer show, action, Bob's Burgers, and you're like, somebody likes Bob's Burgers. Okay, so I also want to talk about like losing money at a convention, right? Like they're not always all going to be winners.
I don't know what that's like.
Oh, okay. Brush your shoulder off.
After I said there was one show where I did lose money.
Well, I mean, I've had shows where like I barely made back my expenses. I got out of the red, and then I made a little profit where I'm just like, I'm probably not coming back to this show because it didn't like like Steph said, your number is around $2,000, so it's like if I can't make at least $2,000, it's not worth it for you, right? Like, and so I'm kind of like the same way. Like, I want to come home at least like if if depending on where I go, like if I go to Dragon Con, the number's a little bit higher, but $2,000.
Oh yeah, but like the goal is definitely higher, for
higher,
particular
right?
shows.
Yeah.
But like in general, it's just like that's my bar. Just like I'm not gonna buy unless it's local and it's easy. Then it's just like, oh okay, well like $1,000, like whatever, that's fine, that's easy.
Well, I mean, I've done like
again, I'm like making
a pretty good job of filtering out the shows right now. I won't make like that, but I remember like so in 2019, like Tim comes to this show. It's called ASIN. I do really good at ASIN, Anime Central. I think it's what it stands for. But there's another anime show that happens here in Chicago where I don't know if it exists anymore or not, but Tim apparently does really well at it too. But I barely like made money at this. So it's one of those shows where like day 2, by the end of the day as it was rounding out, I barely had gotten into the red. And I showed up for day 3 because my buddy Fred was working it with me, and we were both like, I told him, I was like, we're barely there. We're almost gonna make the money. As soon as we make the money back for this booth, we're done. Because it was local, I was like, I just want to go get some Korean barbecue and call it a day. like that's how frustrated I was with this show, and like it was just weird. Like it was in the same venue as ASIN, so I thought like the anime fans would be there still, but apparently the showrunner was an asshole or something, and like nobody wanted to support him. So like all this stuff came about. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I was till later, but So as soon as we made back that booth cost, I was like, if you're lucky enough to do this, I fucking suggest you do this. Fucking leave. Like, I made my money, I packed everything up, and I just left. And they're like, you can't leave. I'm like, you can't stop me from leaving. Like, I paid for this booth. If you don't invite me back, that's fine. I'm never coming back to this show anyway. There is an artist, I won't name him, in our group who does this, like, it's like a cleansing ritual for him. Like, he's one of my really good friends. And the first time I saw him do it, he was just like, the show wasn't going that good, and he was at an away show. He was, he was in Portland with us, Portland. And when the show wasn't going good, he just booked a flight out, packed up his shit, and flew home. Okay. And I was just like, wow. Like, at first I was like shocked. I was like, you just spent money to just leave, so he was probably taking a hit. But he was like, I can't handle this. I'm not doing good. It's depressing me. I just, he just wanted to leave. And he did. Yeah. And at first I thought, wow, okay, that's shocking to me. And then he did it again in another show. And I was like, is this just your thing? Like, but then I realized, like, no one's telling you not to. No one can force you to work the show. If you're not doing good and your mental stability is completely faltering, leave.
There is a certain freedom and power to just being like, I don't fucking care anymore at a
Yes.
con. When
Yeah.
you just like, when you're like, okay, I'm done, and you just like sit down, and you just like get on your phone, or you just like wander around aimlessly, and you're just
I mean,
like,
if it's a good show, you can wander around a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
It's like, I feel like we've all at least experienced that a few times, where it's like either you're having a bad show or you're just like so goddamn exhausted, and you're just like, fuck it. You're just like,
yeah, but it's like on track to where it's just like it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah,
It's like this is a wash. Let me just
I
wander about.
I think it was Gen Con 2018, and I'd already had like the best show ever at that point for me. And it was the last day, and there were like 2 hours left in the show, and I was like, fuck, I haven't had a chance to walk around or like look at any vendors or like buy anything, because like I love Magic and I wanted to go buy Magic cards. And so I just like fucking left my table, and I put a little sign that said like, be back later, going to buy Magic cards.
Yo, you were on that corner across from Sasha and me, I believe.
I don't know if, no, it wasn't that year. It was the year that I was next to Lucy was next to me, and then Tyler was next to Lucy, and then I had I forget her name on the other side of me. But I just was like, I've done the best I have ever done at one of these events. I want to go reward myself with shiny cardboard, and I don't care if I lose out on any potential sales. So I just put a sign that was just like, went to buy Magic cards, be back later.
I mean, I did that at my first year at Spectrum. I went to Spectrum because everyone kept telling me, it's almost like a LuxCon, right? It's like a networking show, but there's also like a artist showcase where you can sell your stuff. So I remember
when Spectrum was still its own thing.
It's when it was
So
the last year. It was its own thing.
So it's still a small owned event, not merged with Planet Comic Con.
Yeah,
like it now is.
Yeah,
okay.
I think this was 2018. I believe in 2019 is when they merged or something, maybe or 2018 they skipped, and I think 2017. So it was 2017.
Yeah.
Either way, like I remember there's a point where I made back my booth, and I was just like, I have not walked around and checked out all this art, and I left this, and at the same time there were free portfolio reviews from Lauren Pinto and oh my god, why is her name failing me? Zoe Robinson, who are really good friends with me now. But I literally was like, I want to go up there. I see this line of people, and you guys have met Andrew Sides on this show. I made friends with Andrew while waiting in that line. Like I left a sign on my booth saying, "Getting a portfolio review. Feel free to text me. I'm looking down at you." And like people would be in my booth like, "Are you coming back?" And I'd look down and be like, "Be back in a minute." You know, like I'm like, and I was like, I left, and I literally put another sign that said, "I trust you not to steal my art." You know, like I said, "Come back later. I'll give you a discount." You know, and I waited because I was waiting in that line for like almost an hour because it was a big line, and I was like, "This is your golden opportunity to get a portfolio review." And I still remember I got to the front of the line. And I went with Zoe because they capped Lauren's line. They were like, "You can't get in this line anymore." I'm like, "Fine, I'll get one from Zoe then." And as I got to the front of the line, Andrew and I are chatting away, and Lauren just like, he looks at me and she's like, "What are you doing in line?" And I was just like, "I don't know, getting a portfolio review." And she's like, "You and I are friends. We can talk anytime you want." And in my head, honestly, I didn't think we were that chummy. So I was like, "Oh, can I still get a review right now?" Because I've been waiting here for an hour, you know, like, come on. And so, like, you know, like, there's that moment where you're just like, I need some me time. I need something for myself to make me feel good about myself. That review went great, by the way. So I was like, I felt great that I took the time to go talk to these two art directors, you know. And Zoe had the privilege of working my Gen Con booth in 2019. I asked her to cover my booth while I was at so the first board game I ever really did was Renegade, right? I did a game called Time Chase, and they invited me into their Renegade's room that they rent out, and I was like, "Can somebody cover my booth for probably an hour and a half while I'm gone?" Sean Murray was at the booth next to me. You were across from me, Andrew, I remember. And Sean was like, "Don't worry, I'll run all the credit card sales for you." And I said, "Thanks, I appreciate that." Except the thing was, he didn't realize that I was making a sale like every 5 to 10 minutes. And most of them are all credit cards. And Zoe was like, "This booth is busy." I'm like, "Yes." Like, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, I'm having a good show, you know, like, and I had to, like, you know, he had to transfer all his money over to me at the end. He was just like, "What the hell, man?" I'm just like, but that hour or so I was gone, I it was nice to be away from my own booth and just sit. I literally went into a room full of people who wanted to get the board game signed, and that was kind of a cool feeling, you know, like I didn't think anyone would show up.
Yeah.
I was like, no one's gonna show up to get this fucking game signed. They want the game, and they're just gonna walk away. They could care less about meeting the people who designed it. But it was cool. I don't remember if you were with. Oh no, I think so. At the end of the show, the lady, the art director there, her name's Terry. She invited us back later to paint miniatures, and she gave us a bunch of Power Rangers miniatures, which is kind of fun.
Adorable.
Yeah.
I think that might have been the same night that I went and played Magic with some Magic content creators that I met that day.
She gave it was Michael, Manamivable, and myself, Gavin, and Brian all went, and she had gifted me, since I was one of the artists that worked on the stuff. She gave me like I still have it, the Power Rangers board game, and I've never played it, to be honest with you. I got no time. I got no friends. let's just be honest. It's not a time issue. It's not having a friends issue.
That's great.
So also, let me think. What else on my list here? Mentors. So Steph, you were like one of the few, or I guess I'd say a rare former artist where you took the time to hang out with people who are like legacy artists or industry level artists, and you did the smart thing, which is you got advice from them before you jumped.
I had a very specific tactic, and my tactic was, especially because I felt like I'd floundered already for so long, and I couldn't quite like get the whole, and I knew I still quite didn't have like the work ethic that I needed. So I was just like, I need mentors. I need people who are going to take me under their wing. And so my tactic was very simply, I was just like, I have to show my face. I have to be likable. I have to have them like want to keep me around, so I have to be like charismatic, which is like with that more than anything is.
That's a tall act for you. Last time I checked.
Oh
yeah. Like for me, it was just that. So because I knew it was just like it was very simple. It was like if I'm going to approach these people, like what do I have to offer them? Just like in terms of my skills and my experience, like nothing, jack shit. Like I am a nobody. Like I don't. Like, but I can like one, I can be likable, and I can be the kind of person who's like, oh, like we like him enough to keep him around. Let's do that. and it's just like I can offer free labor, so it's just like I can be present. I work as a student. I can do what needs to be done, And at least at that point, I was still at a point where it's just like to give some more context about my life and everything. Like I'm not married. I don't have kids at the time. Up until
you have kids now?
You have kids now? What do you mean at the time?
She's my third child, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. You're one of those weirdos.
She's sitting here in my lap. But yeah. So
it's like at the time we're both like, what? This is news I have not heard about?
It is my cat child.
I mean, Alan, what's the difference between a pet and a baby?
So I've had this conversation. I'm gonna say this really quick because I say it all the time. Whenever people compare their dogs or their cats to a child, I say, look, man, sure, that's your little cat baby or that's your little dog kid or whatever. But at the end of the day, if my baby dies, I'm going to prison. But if your dog dies, nobody cares. Like you care, obviously, and your family cares, but you're not going to go to.
Not to suggest that it's like my cat.
You're not going to go to prison for it. People are going to be like, your dog died? Oh, that's sad. From what? Okay, your kid died? There's a murder investigation happening against me right now.
In terms of like when I started, it's just like okay, I had no like I had no no major responsibility, so no kids, not married. I was living with my parents, no student debt because I paid it off, and I'd mostly gone to school on scholarship as it was. The only reason I had any debt was because I ran into taking classes a fifth year, so the scholarship money ran out. Just because I switched majors multiple times and eventually went back to just getting my a BA in studio art. But yeah, so after I traveled around some, I went back. I lived with my parents with it. Like once I got the studio job, in a year of saving up for that, I got a house and everything. And again, these were things that I was able to. It was like for me. It felt like over the last 3 years. It's well pre-COVID. The year or so prior to that, it was all like pretty much set on the hyperdrive because one like. Mm-hmm. I just again I have a lot of freedoms. I don't have I didn't have any debt. I didn't have any kids. Like no, and so that obviously that made it way easier. For anyone having any of those things, it's going to be a completely different game that you're trying to play. Trying to balance all of those things. And I had the mentors. So having those things, like those factors combined, also being like in a major hub here in the South, in Atlanta, like that also helped considerably. It's just like you can do a lot nowadays with the internet and you don't have to go to places, but I mean, there's still nothing that like having that face-to-face contact and making those connections. At the end of the day, I absolutely think I absolutely it's such a good investment, no matter like where you are. Just like put the money together to go to those places and show up and show your faith. Like that's how I got my mentorships. I just kept showing up to like Amherst. I went to I think I was like at New York Comic Con a few years back as well. I went to Dragon Con. I've been going for like over 10 years now. And that's where I first met Dan. I think his first year where he was like the guest of honor, years back now. So it was just like that repetition of showing up and like, and that was something that I had specifically heard suggested from other people already in the field. And like, I think at IMC and stuff, they're just like, keep showing up. After time, we're going to recognize you. They're just like, they're going to be more comfortable like approaching you and all of it. And that's exactly what happened. And it was just, and at the end of the day, it was just basically taking the advice that I just kept hearing over and over again. And once like I had those connections and everything, and then being able to kind of like condense the timeline down. And I was just really motivated to do that because again, I felt like I was already behind as it was. All of my peers in grade school, like in high school, I was in like a special program for like math and science. So all of like my friends back then, there's like, they're all going to be engineers. They're going to be fine. And for me, like at 24, 25, where I was just like, oh my God, like I still don't have my shit together. It's just feeling like it's like I'm still with my parents, this and that. Like I was waitressing 3 years ago. It was just like I was just hungry enough. And it's just and again, it was just super lucky that it all just still kind of lined up the way that it did. And so then again, the last few years have just been like it's felt very fast in terms of like I feel like I've caught up and then some in terms of like where I want to be at this point in my life. But it took a lot of work. It took a lot of luck. But more than anything, I'm just so endlessly grateful for like the people that I met and the people that they introduced me to, and so on and so forth. It's mostly been about like my tactic, and I'm just like, it's all about the people, it's like at the end of the day, that's and thankfully for me, I've always felt like that's been my forte. So it's just like, if I couldn't do art, I could find something else to do. But it was just like that. I wanted to take on that challenge. It's like, this is a thing that like everyone has told me. It's just like, you should find something else. Like every it was like the family was always worried. It was always like, apply to this, do that. It's just like, the only support that I really had was my mother. And even then she was like still worried because they knew me well enough to know like I didn't have the work ethic that I needed way back when.
Sure. You've the work ethic comes from just doing the work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like what you did is kind of like I did that but nobody told me to do it, right? I didn't realize that I can just reach out to artists and talk to them and they would give me advice. Like I went to LuxCon because somebody told me about this show that's full of artists, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been Tawny, actually, who was like, go there and show them your portfolios. You can get all the reviews you want, stuff. And I literally went to LuxCon last year. It was in Allentown. And I still remember this weekend because I met all these, I'll call them art heroes, like people I never thought I'd meet face to face, like Donato Giancola. And like, I literally was just like, can I get if you've got time, can I get a portfolio review? And at this time, I didn't even own an iPad because I was broke ass. So I had like just printouts of all my artwork. I had 5x7 printouts of my artwork, and I would just show them, and they would look through it and give me reviews. And I got a bunch of reviews that weekend from multiple people, like like Tommy Arnold and like Donato.
That's the thing. It's just like just put yourself in front of all these people who are like ahead, who are where you want to get to, who are at least even if they're just like a few steps ahead of you, and that's sort of like the peer group that I've fallen into in the last couple of years. Like I still have those like mentor friends who are just but now it's just like I have way more people to like ask these questions to, and they're age in their careers and their lives where they're a lot closer to where I am. So I'm just like, how do I get to the next step? Because sometimes like the mentors who are 15, 20 years ahead, it's just like they kind of forgot. It's a different time, and they're so far removed where they're just like, like I'm not sure how you would do that, or like how I don't remember how I did that, this or that. So it's just like So now I have all of these other individuals to go to if I ever have a question, and I utilize that whenever I need to. And so it's just kind of being willing to and not being anxious or scared to do that and put yourself in front of people and ask the questions that you have, because man, it's going to save you so much time. It saved me a ton of time. It's just like, oh, I didn't have to experiment with like moving a booth and this and that. It's just like, at least not for too long. So it's just like I already started out with something okay, but then it was just moving just like these like big sort of like jumps of just like, how do I like, and just like getting all this feedback. And even like all those early shows I would ask people like, hey, can you come back to my booth and give me some feedback? I remember that first Dragon Con, I asked, I had Annie and Justin that was there, and they're good friends with like hey, could you give me a raise? He's like, yeah, this was after one of the show had ended one day, like a Friday or Saturday, and he was around. He gives me a bunch of feedback, and then from that interaction, I mentioned like, oh hey, like yeah, we were just kind of talking about the show and other people who were there. I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm really hoping to meet like XYZ. He's like, oh, let me go introduce you. So he walks us over. And I was specifically talking about Tim because he's obviously got a huge Tim Von Ruden has a huge online platform and everything. And he's also been kind of like he's been a model of after which I have sort of like set up my goalposts. I'm just like, this is how I want to do it. I want to do something similar and emulate, kind of how they've gone about it. So I just kind of just like mentioned, I was like, oh, I have one. He's like, oh, like he knew him, he was friends with him, so he walks me over, and so that was like my entry point into like that group, and who just like they're all like indie artists, they're all convention people, who have been doing it for years, so that gave me access to like that whole facet of just an endless amount of information, and just like, and again, it's like it's not. It was never just like, oh, like, just, I never went in with it with like the attitude of just like, it's about the networking. I'm just like, no, I'm good at making friends. I need to put myself in, and I just want to make friends and be like nice and friendly and be the kind of person that, people want to spend time, and so that was it. I was just like, I just need to make friends. This is, it's like kindergarten all over again. It was like, just make friends with everyone. And that's what I did. And it's just like, and you can't like fake that either. It's just like people know when you're trying to like, it's like they sense it. They're just like, even if they might not
tell
say
if
anything.
you're genuinely trying to be an artist or if you're genuinely just trying to make money.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference. It's just like, oh, like are they doing it, because it's just like it's something that they're sincerely passionate about, or are they just like, is it just a kind of a cash grab for them? And are they just hustling? Are they just doing exactly that? Are they just networking? Like, and I know we continue to use the term because it's the best way to describe all of it. But it's networking, but at the same time, it's just like it's still not. It's still just like I'm just making friends, and it's like we have enough interests and we enjoy the company, and it's just like, yeah, we hang out, we we can approach it, we have conversations about this and that, and it's just that. So it's also about like not overthinking about it, but not going in with it the intention of just like, I need to get this information from them. Because yeah, it comes across, people know, so you just have to be really genuine and sincere, even if you're kind of nervous about it. It's just like, it's understandably so, but then at least once you get like past that like initial like interaction, then you realize like, oh, like they're just people too, like they're just completely normal, nice, friendly people, as everyone has been in this industry, which makes me really happy that I made an effort to get into like this particular field of like
99% of the people, I'll say.
99, yes. For the most part, everyone's super duper nice, and there's just so many other facets, like so many other areas of the art community that just aren't, and they're really cutthroat, and like people are really guarded about how they do things and their business practices and this and that, and it's just like, nope. It's just like everyone's super duper willing,
I mean, I've had industry artists like send me messages like here's the artwork, here's like artists I found online that I think like your style is kind of gearing towards like over time, and then to the point where I've gotten on calls with them where they'll like walk me through like how I can maybe evolve into that with my existing artwork, and they do like literally like a phone call and like Photoshop and like layer building, and then they show me how I can kind of get to that and it's something I'm still learning, but it's kind of like, wow, you didn't have to take the time to do this because you obviously have a career, and you're busy, and I'm nobody, but they see something in you and they're going to help you. But you know, like I said, LuxCon was the first time I got that feeling, and then Dave Seeley was nice enough to invite me to work his booth, and at that show at San Diego my first year, I did the same thing. I showed up with a portfolio, but I had an iPad this time finally, and I got a bunch of but I went to the big industry people now, so like Hasbro's there, I went to Funko like twice. I really wanted to work for Funko because Andrew knows I love Funkos.
You do.
But I went to all the industry booths there, like Sideshow is hopefully someday I can work for them doing something. But I said, is there an art director here? Then I would ask for, and then that's how I became friends with like, couple weeks back I had Dave Wilkins and David Igo on the show, both who used to work for Sideshow, and I became friends with them because I met them at San Diego, and I was like, can I get a portfolio review from you guys? And they gave me phenomenal reviews, and I took a bunch of their advice that is still in my work. So but there's always that nervous feeling where you don't know if you want to bother the artist. If they don't want to be bothered, they're going to tell you. They'll just be like, I'm busy. You're going to get either the artist who's willing to help you, sit down and talk to you. You're going to get the artist who says, hey, not right now, I'm a little in the middle of something. Or you get the third one, which is they tell you to fuck off.
In which case, that's probably not an artist you want to get to know.
In which case, it's somebody you don't want to talk to.
Like filtered itself out. Great.
And that last one is very rare, is my point.
It's such a rare.
Such a rare thing that happens.
You shouldn't even assume that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and if it ever happens to you, don't just brush it off, leave them alone. On to the next one, right? Like it's don't let that one, because I had one or two over the years who acted that way. Don't let them get to you, basically. So
but yeah, don't let it get to you.
And I don't know if Andrew, I don't know if you walked around and got reviews from different artists or not, because you yourself are a teacher.
Yeah, I did a lot when I was growing up, like when I went to Gen Con in Indiana. In high school and stuff, I would go up and ask for portfolio reviews from individual artists. When I started doing cons, I can't remember doing a lot of that. I know there were certain people that I like would identify in the industry kind of as like, oh, like they know what they're doing. I'm gonna, like see what I can learn, and not like in a way where it's like that's all I wanted to do was like learn from them, kind of like what Steph was saying about like being genuine and whatnot. But like I can't say that I feel like I have like mentors that pop in from time to time throughout my time like as a freelancer, and
I think once you reach a certain level, it's just like you have to be like at a very particular industry event where it feels like it's like, oh yeah, we went to, Andrew and I went to MondoCon a couple years ago now, and that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly where we got an Airbnb together. We were just like, we're going to Austin, we're going to MondoCon, and it was phenomenal because it's a tiny like poster convention essentially. And the thing is, it's just it's mostly just fans and people wanting to buy the posters and like these limited edition collectibles and stuff, and they don't give a shit about who drew it, which is phenomenal because it was just like we were there and we were some of the like few artists there, so we had access to every artist that like both of us have like idolized for so many years. They didn't have the really busy ones were just like they were just selling much of and signing stuff, but that was only like a handful of them, and then the rest of the like these like big top dogs in our industry, they were just like sitting there and they would occasionally sell something, but they weren't doing it. So I got to have like lots of like 30, 45-minute conversations with a ton of like huge idols and like show my portfolio and Andrew's going back to the same thing because he wanted he's like I want to work for Mondo. So that was a thought, and like for me initially like that was also the impetus was just like this is a company I would like to work for. Let's talk to all these people who do work for them, get feedback from them, try to see. We were able to talk to plenty of people who work at the top at Mondo and everything. Like we got to like meet Drew Struzan, and we were like so shocked when we were so shocked when we walked by his booth because we're just like there's this giant booth, all the movie posters, and he was just sitting there. And there no one was in front of him, and we're just like, Andrew, and we're just like, we were just so shocked there was just no one there around him. And it's like, and Andrew was like super nervous because of course he's like a huge idol of his, and I'm just like, no, it was just like, and I like try to sort, and we talked to him, and he was so sweet, and so again there was no one talking to him. They were just there to buy the posters and stuff, but to them, like the artists weren't like the big deal. It was like the content, that they were, that they were showcasing and doing their work for. So that was just like, Mondo is just such a gem of a show, because it is one where so few artists attend that as an artist who's there, it is just like, man, and it's not expensive either. It's in Austin.
Yeah,
like,
we should go next time, man. Expensive. I got family in Dallas. We can drive to Austin. It's like 3 hours.
It was so worth it. We got invited to like this party that like all the artists go to, and it's funny because like
no big deal. You always feel pretty like, I got the sideshow invite to their party, and I felt super like special going to it, and then it's just like I was like, this is amazing, but I get there and it's just like a backyard barbecue, like people hanging out and getting drinks and eating a buffet. And I was like, okay, this is fun.
What was super funny was like, for this particular one, it was just like, I don't know if he's like the owner of Mondo or anything, but it was basically one of like the top couple of people. It was at his house. He was basically just like an eccentric rich man. We're walking through this house, like, it's just like this weird, intricate, just like exactly how you would think like a weird, like eccentric, like rich white dude would live. We walk in, it's just like, it's got like, these tall ceilings and this and that. There's like the statue from Clockwork Orange. I think there's like a penis or something. Like another room, there's a library, and there's like a stuffed hyena with a tie on it, and I took a photo with it, and it was just so weird. It was just like, this guy just has all these cool artists hanging out.
The weirdest house I've still seen on for a director or an artist is, if you ever get a chance to look up Guillermo del Toro's, he's got like a whole like house full of like random knickknacks. It's got like the creepy girl from like The Grudge, I think, in a corner, and it's
just like basically a museum.
It looks like the Addams Family house to me, except in color, right? And it's just like,
it was somewhat like that. It was a little weird. It was kind of just like, but yeah, it was just like a backyard party there. But it was, and we had access because it was just like, And I think it also helped, being at a stage where just like we were at least well enough into our careers and at our skill levels where people were like, we were talking to people and people were taking us seriously. They're just like, they're not just starting out. I was like, oh, okay. Like, no, they're actually like, they're a part of our industry, which was nice, because like, it's like, I guess technically we are peers, which is like weird to think about, especially when you're early on, and it doesn't hit me quite as frequently now, but then I'm just like, oh yeah, I am a working artist, I guess. Like, I'm an illustrator. This is what I do full time. So it does take a while for like the freshness, and excitement of that sort of to wear off. But eventually everyone sort of hit me again. I'm just like, oh yeah, I get to surround myself with these people, and they consider me like one of them. I'm like, cool. Like, childhood dreams. Yes.
Yeah,
achieved.
Exactly.
Well,
but I think we've been running here for a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say I gotta wrap it up. Yeah. We're a little over time, but that's not a big deal.
A little over time. We've been going for a bit, but no, I think it's a super fun conversation.
But so as you can tell, there's all these different perspectives. I think at the end of the day, we're all doing fine. Once we all got out of our own heads. But if there's any piece of advice you guys want to add at the end, or if not, then I can call it.
I think I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just like once you kind of manage to get over once you like manage to get that over that initial hump of the anxiety of like putting yourself out there and getting your work out there, like as long as you're putting in the work and putting in the time, and your skills are like continuing to improve, and it's just a persistence thing. Because again, it's just like there's no such thing as like an overnight success. It's just like, no, they've been working at it for a really long time, and it might seem like that, but that's not the case. There was a lot of build up to that to begin with. I guess don't be so nervous. It's like the only thing I would have done differently is like maybe I should have like started putting myself and my work out there earlier than I did. I waited a really long time, but I mean at least on some level that means my work was at a level to where just like I could afford to skip some steps in the process where it's just like I wasn't starting out as a teenager. I was starting out like in my mid-20s. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I've been at this for a while now, and my skills are at a good stage. But yeah, it's just like there's nothing that's going to be as beneficial, I think, as getting over that initial hump of like the anxiety and being afraid to just like just do the thing, just like push yourself, do the thing. Get yourself to talk to those people and stuff, because chances are they're going to be super nice, super friendly, super giving, and it's absolutely worth it. And then you'll realize afterwards, just like I was nervous about nothing.
Yep.
It is a nice thing to realize that, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part is always the start.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It really is. Once you get the ball rolling and that momentum behind you, it's just like, you're good. You're kind of just solid.
I always tell people the same thing, which is basically make sure make the art because you love making the art. And everything else will fall into place. But if you do it for the money, people can tell. Usually it doesn't read well and you don't have the same love or excitement for the whatever you're trying to do. Like, don't go into it thinking I'm going to make a bunch of money.
This is not the field to do that.
Not the field to be in.
And if you are going to it because you work really fucking hard. And even then, still, it's just like you're going to work really hard regardless. And that's specifically if you want to do this as like a full-time living. It is not easy. Like at no point. Again, I felt very lucky at a lot of points, but it wasn't easy. It was very stressful for a very long time. And even then, that's almost feels ridiculous to say because I'm only like 27, and I'm just like, God, it's just like, what am I saying? It's not like I've been at this for like that long, really. Where I guess I kind of like started taking it seriously in my late teens, like 19, 20-ish, and I was just like, all right, I need to get together if I want to do this. So it has been a while, but still, it can be stressful. It can be a lot of work and stuff, but I think, just kind of persistence and being tactical about it. It's just like, okay, rather than just like, let me just try like a shotgun attempted, like all these things. It's like, no, don't do that. Be smarter and kind of be more strict about what you put that energy and time into, because if you can kind of like start narrowing that down early on, it saves you so much time. And that's, I think, one of the bigger problems with a lot of like artists early on. They're just all the things, which is good to try, for a while, but once you start finding something like that thing that kind of like it's just like, it kind of just something about it clicks a little bit more than the other things. It's like, okay, start on that, and start like focusing in bit by bit. And the more focus that you can get, the quicker you're going to start moving.
Yep, that's good advice. Andrew, really? Nothing? What do you tell your students?
Pee.
All right, that's fair. All right, Andrew, I'm gonna wrap it up then.
You gotta get something.
This is like when the teacher's like, any more questions, and all the students are like psychically telling each other like, don't you dare say a goddamn word.
That's fine. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks for anyone who's watching. I will splice together the last bit, the first bit, and this bit together, and I'll post it up on YouTube because apparently it choked out halfway through.
Oh no.
Hey, whatever. Welcome to my world.
Right.
So thanks for watching, guys. Next week, next week I have Eli and Manaya on again. We're gonna talk probably about 80s cartoons and or Gundam. We haven't decided yet, so I'll decide by Monday. Thanks for watching, guys.